Okay, hello everybody. Trade relations, and since we have talked about yeah the classical theoretical background of trade theory, where the outcome was that in general we can say it is beneficial for everybody to open the borders and to have no obstacles against trade. Later on in this lecture, we will also discuss some models where there is an argument that in some special conditions, maybe it is a good idea to shut down your country against trade. But in general, the theory says that, especially in the long term, it is a win-win situation for every trade partner. This maybe has been overseen by the government in the United States. Anyway, all this, or the main part of this theory, was developed in the United States, but quite often you don't hear on your own experts. Anyway, we have to deal with this guy. Not having open borders, what this means for the economic development. This we see every day since the beginning of March. Okay, but what we want to do today is, to look at a model which, more or less looks at the data which we see. So how large are the volumes we are trading? Which kind of trading partners do we have? And having this data, then there was developed, I think, somehow in the 1960s, 1970s. I call it a descriptive model in order to explain the trade relations, and this is called the gravity model. Why it is called the gravity model, I will explain in more detail later on, maybe today or tomorrow. A first hint, the name in general comes from the gravity model, the Newtonian explanation of the movement of the planets around the sun in the 17th century. And then in economics, we use a quite similar formula to the formula which describes how the Earth, Jupiter, Saturn, and so on are moving around the sun. But we will come to this in more detail. I already said, well, we at first just have a look how much and with whom we are trading, and therefore we need the data, and we will start today with a little case study so that I do not just give you a diagram. Here are the trade relations of the United States. We will take the United States as an example, but that we start, well, where can we find and how much and with whom is the United States are trading. In general, it is a good idea to use the very general data from the World Trade Organization, or in parallel, both institutions are situated near Washington, D.C., or the United Nations. But I said this, I think, also already in the beginning of the lecture, or especially in my macro lecture. that somehow if you go to some database in the internet, then you know that the data is there, but that it is maybe quite hard to find the data, or the format of the data is, yeah, let's say somehow special, so that it is not that easy for a general person to work with this data. And therefore, I gave you here the link of the International Trade Center. And well, they take the data from the World Trade Organization and from the UN. So it is the same data, but it is a database where you can more or less directly work with the data after you have downloaded it. So I hope that we can just click on the link. Otherwise, you can copy it from the PowerPoint file, and then you are at ITC, International Trade Center. And well, to obtain the data in more detail, we have to create an account, and then you have to pay, of course, but the yearly time series, they are open source. So what we want to have is United States, clicking on that, oops, or United States of America. Here we are. And then you see the monthly and the quarterly data you cannot download, but you can download the yearly time series. Then we are at that page, and here you see the first step is that you see product categories. This is, of course, later on interesting for you when you, in general, for your country should analyze the trade relations. You can also use this database, because here you find the general yeah, aggregated groups, and you can have a look into this. But here I want that you look at the 20 largest import and export partners of the United States. So imports we have already, but we have here products. So change this to country, and then you see you have default 25. Yeah, if we download them, then I think it is almost all trading partners, and time period. And also for your analysis of the trade relations, of course, a longer time series of the development of the trade relations is interesting. So we change this to 20 years, and then we are starting from 2006, I think. Can we even expand this? Let's see. Because in my memory, it was until 2002. And for an analysis, this would be interesting. 20 per page. Well, let's see what happens when we download it, because it always changes a little bit. Why is it 2002? I think this is the first data point of this database. Would be interesting if you remember the beginning of the lecture where I showed you the overall trade relations, and there you have seen that especially 2000, 2001, there we have the start of the, yeah, really very fast globalization due to the trade relations, because in the beginning of the 2000s, then the overall trade volume in the world was growing per year roughly between 5 and 10%. And in parallel, then you can have a look, well, has my country then directly also took up this speed, or was it even, no, earlier is not possible, or came they into the global trade relations a little bit later on? So relatively to the overall trade relations, this would be interesting. So, but we should have a look at the actual data of the trade relations of the United States with the 20 largest trading partners. So here, clicking on this Excel symbol, we can download it. Trade, and this is imported United States, save, and then we are changing to exports, and here already it's starting at 2006. So let's download it and save. And what you also see here is for later on your analysis to go into more detail. We have here products. Oh, there you can choose. Here you can go into more detail. Let's have a look at it. What happens then? For example, let's take this group, organic chemicals. And then you see, for example, if you see within the product that this is very important for the country, then you can also go into detail and look at this category and which countries are then the largest trading partners in this category. But let's go back to total product. What I also wanted to show you is, in this possible, by country. Yeah, that you could also go here, not only products, that you can also have a look into services. And maybe you have heard about this, that especially the service sector overall in the world is very important for the trade relations of the, in general, United States with another country. Because if you remember, I gave you also the overall table with the openness, and there we saw that relatively to their GDP, United States are not trading that much with the world. Overall, since they are the largest economy, of course, exports and imports are almost have almost the largest volume in the world, similar size compared to China and Germany. But specifically, if you look at the trade relations with services, there the United States are one of the largest trading partners in the world, and the reason is quite clear. It's all these digital services they export to the world via the tech companies situated in the United States, Amazon, Google, Meta, um, X, and so on. So, yeah, that's about this database here. What you then also can do is, of course, have a look at the statistical office of your country. Then, because of course there you find also the data, but um, uh, quite often to go into these databases, it is not that easy to find just the trade relations with the partners and with the product groups. And therefore, also since this data is directly coming from the World Trade Organization and the United Nations, there we can also say that the data is quite reliable. Because on the other hand, sometimes if you have, for example, a country of the emerging markets, then you not really know if the data is that reliable. Okay, so we have downloaded the data and let's go into the data. Imports. Well, since it is the old format, XLS, it is asking. Why is it XLS? I actually don't know. Maybe just because of the main reason, never change a running system. Oops. I always have problems to move the window. Now it works. So we are interested into the actual data. So let's copy this. And where is my new? Here, USA X imports. So this then imports 24, and that we know the source. I recommend that you also give you just a hint where your data comes from. Then I copy this. Then again, copy. And you should use, if you copy data, this option here, because then you know that you are only copying the numbers. Otherwise, maybe you also are copying the format, and yeah, this causes sometimes some problems. Oh, did I have the exports here? Let's see. Imported. Oh, this name means the importers that they take the data that the United States takes data from these countries. Okay. So that these countries are exporting to the United States, of course. If you change the view from Mexico to the United States, then Mexico is exporting from Mexico to the United States, but the United States are importing from Mexico. So, and here we have the world starting, and let's copy this one too. And the unit we should also use is 1,000 US dollars. Oops. No. So I have to copy it like this, and now it should work. Okay, and let's go of the supplying markets exports. Oh, I think now I interchanged it. I have to be careful that I not have changed exports and imports. Let's do it again. So the first one with 217, this was importing markets. Opening and so I really interchanged it. So these are, I'm sorry for this, the exports of the United States. So markets for product exported by the United States. You see it here in the name of the file. So these are exports. Then let's close this and now open the imports. Oops, why is it all this moving? Oh, here we have 25 data. Didn't I see it in the exports? Again, opening. Sometimes, oh, it is 25. I already copied the 25 data. Sometimes, since the end of 25 is just 3 months away, you find for some country not already a data point for 25. So, but now again, unit exports and imports, and or we can directly put it here and imports. And where we are, imported value. Yes, and here now, at least at this point, I would have seen that I interchanged the numbers because here you see the much higher volume of overall imports of the United States relative to exports. And this is what we know, that relatively the trade balance is there the United States have the largest deficit in the world, and this is, yeah, one of the main arguments and reasons of this guy in the Oval Office, that he wants to have here more or less a trade balance. But the funny thing is, when he introduced 1 year ago his strategy to start all these tariffs, maybe you remember, then he showed this table in front of the White House in the United States. He wants to start to increase tariffs with almost all countries in the world. But the funny thing was, his argument that he wants to have a trade balance with every country, there are also some countries where the United States have a positive trade balance. So exports are larger than imports. And there he said, just, well, let's change nothing. So, because then the logical argument would have been that you raise the tariffs with the countries where you have a deficit, and you lower your tariffs with the countries where you have a surplus. And well, but that this guy is not acting logically, this we know for sure. This is maybe the only thing what we know for sure about this guy. Oh, that now I also did a mistake here, because of course the import data with the trading partners have other countries here in the volumes compared to the export, compared to the imports. So now here we are. So then we want to have the 20 largest, and I'm a lazy guy, so I count down here, and then we have here our table. Let's format this maybe a little bit. That we can later on see it a little bit better, and we have to see the unit especially. Somehow like this. Yeah, and now we have this data. We will do it now only for goods for you analyzing your country. Yeah, you can also have a look into the service trade relations. So here we are. And now looking at this data, what do you think? We have another one to put up. If you look at the largest trading partners of the United States, do you have some explanation for the trading partners? Are you surprised to find Mexico, Canada, China, United Kingdom um, as in this table of the largest import-export partners, and also United Kingdom is, for example, here, and we have it here. Well, they are, of course, not always at the same positions, but the first three, for example, they are at the same position parallelly, and the exports and imports. If you look at the countries, do you have some explanations, or are you very surprised to find these countries are the largest trading partners of the United States? Because this will, of course, then also be your task, that you look at the trade relations and that you have some explanations. Okay, you are not very surprised? Yes, of course. These are neighbors. So Mexico and Canada are neighbors. But then, of course, China is, of course, not a neighbor. It's, I don't know how large is the Pacific Ocean, 6,000, 7,000 kilometers. It's quite far away. Okay, then let's talk about Japan here. 2 times. And Japan is also quite far away. We see here also Germany. There you have to go to the other direction, over the Atlantic Ocean. Also very far away. Do you have there an explanation why we find Japan and Germany? One guy is surprised, so maybe then you do not have direct a clue. But if you start to think, what are the general, what are um, the uh, the general economic aspects of Japan? And maybe there are some economic aspects which are similar to the German economic performance in the world. And maybe this is then an explanation why we find Germany and Japan and also China. So all three countries are more or less have relatively the same distance. Once you have to go overseas via the Atlantic, the other time you have to go overseas to over the Pacific Ocean. Let's maybe take these three countries. What do they have in common economically? This actually I showed you in the beginning of the lecture. Let's have a look. I just opened this. Yes, great. China, Germany, Japan. This one is the second, third, and fourth largest GDP in US dollars in the world. So three countries are very large in an economic measure. Well, and of course, the first one, that you are trading with your neighbors. There you can say, well, it is quite easy. Or also, well, you have not to send a ship 6,000 kilometers over an ocean. You just put it on a truck, the goods you want to import or export, and then your transportation costs are not that large compared to sending a ship 6,000 kilometers over an ocean. But on the other hand, a country with a large GDP means that this country is a very large market, and that in general you sell more goods to a large market than to a small market. This is also more or less obvious. And on the other hand, looking at the import, a large country can, of course, sell more goods to you than a small country. Let's say Luxembourg compared to Germany. Even if Luxembourg would have many products which the United States need, well, the volume cannot be that large if you look at a country with, I think, 200,000 inhabitants. Okay, then maybe let's also have a look at imports, especially at this one. And here you see within these databases some artifact. There you see Taipei, China. Let's go into the trade map because I have not copied it, that we can, yeah, here. The name Taipei Chinese, which country is it? This is Taiwan, yes. And this is an artifact which you quite often find for Taiwan if you go to international databases of the UN, IMF. I think you do not find, or it is quite hard to find Taiwan in the IMF database. Let's have a look if we can find this. Oops, I think you participated also in my macro course, and there your task was to use the IMF database. Let's see. GP, is it possible to find Taiwan? Yeah, here even you find, yeah, this was it. Province of China. And I think at the OECD database you do not find Taiwan. What could be the reason for this? And here, if you look at this name, Taiwan, a province of China, then at the first step, you would say, is this really a country? Yes, this is the reason. The second powerful country, most powerful country in the world, China, just is recommending that Taiwan, which has been separated in the 1930s, 1940s, Chiang Kai-shek, he was until he left for Taiwan, he was a president of China, and then Mao Zedong took over. And since then, China is still considering that Taiwan, the island, belongs to China. Well, and the pressure is obviously that high that although we say in Germany, in the United States, that this is a country, this is an independent country, the pressure is that high that in the international databases you do not find the description that this is an independent country. Okay, but let's go back to this. What could be the reason? And I tell you, Taiwan is even not within, measured in GDP, 20 largest countries in the world. Well, this we can have a look. Let's download this data here. And this, of course, will be then also interesting, analyzing the trade relations that maybe you look then for your country. Is it one of the largest country measured in GDP in the world, or is it number 40 or something like this? So for this, of course, you can rely on the IMF database. Sorry, this is real GDP. For this, we need not the growth, but we need nominal GDP. Oops, I want to change this again. GDP in current prices. Now let's download this. All data. And open. And 25. Here we are. Let's go here inside. Numbers again. And let's move here. Well, need it that large. Also the source. And then we want to sort the data. And in the year 2025 and downward. Okay, here you have now to be a little bit careful because you have here also the aggregates, and then the United States is of course starting here. The next one is China. There you see, they are already even larger than the euro area, but the European Union is a little bit larger still than China. And then also aggregates. Oops. Japan. And India already larger than the United Kingdom. There you see the dramatic change in the world during the last 25 years. In the beginning of in 2000 roughly, I think I said this to you that in GDP the size of China was roughly that of Italy. So, and now hopefully we are through these aggregates: France, Italy, Russia, Canada. Oh, again, sub-Saharan. Pity. And this is what I mean by data crunching. How to use the data? Well, it is not always doing what you want. Well, you can, of course, also try to do it with an AI. But I'm right now not that used to it. I have to start it. But let's go until this one. And sometimes the artificial intelligence is not doing what you want. And then you have also to learn um, how you get, oops, the information out of your data set you want to have. So, and then let's see if Taiwan is under the 20th largest. Let's see, where is Taiwan? India? Oops. Oh, I have here also Central Asia. Anyway. Oops. So I have to copy this. I cannot just move this. Okay, this. Since I want to copy it again. So copy and paste. Now it works, but I could not move this. And then you have to copy it and to delete the last one. Okay, so where is Taiwan? I think I have seen this. There. So number 24. And going back to our analysis here, 24 largest. So Taiwan is of course not a neighbor as far away as China, and 24th largest country in the world, and number 4 in imports. Can you show how you download with specific countries for GDP? What do you mean by this? I went here, and this I quite often do. I do not think about how can I manipulate the web page here. I just downloaded all data, and then I know that my country is within this. And with this search and find possibility, you can quite often directly look for your data. Otherwise, you have to, let's say here, Australia. Oops, is it Australia? Uh, Australia. Then you have selected Australia. If you do not want to have the other aggregates, delete them, and then you can go down here and select only the data for your country. Is this what you meant? Okay. So then we are still at the question, how can we explain that not a small, it is still, we have roughly 200 countries in the world. It is, of course, one of the largest countries in the world, but it is not at the 10th largest, so to speak. And if you look at the size compared to Germany, also, where we have it here. So Germany has a GDP, where are we? In US dollars of 5 trillion US dollars, and Taiwan almost 900. So Taiwan is only roughly 20% of market size compared to Germany. But Taiwan exports to the United States roughly 25% more than Germany. What could be the explanation for this? And I would say the explanation is why China has such a large interest to get back Taiwan. And unfortunately, these reasons are, yeah, or quite often, if you look at what the United States right now are doing and initiating wars throughout the world, around the world, that mainly there are similar reasons for our fear that maybe the next conflict is starting because of Taiwan and that China is starting a war in order to invade to Taiwan. Well, I think you are using something like this here, a mobile phone. Maybe you or your parents have electric cars. We are using artificial intelligence and so on. What do we need for all these nice inventions? For these inventions, we need high performance chips, electronic chips. And somehow, this little country, in quotation marks, has more or less a monopoly on the best chips in the world. They provide, roughly, if my information is right, roughly 90% of the high performance chips in the world. And this we will not do right now because I want to go a little bit further. But then if you see here some country where you are somehow surprised? Why do we find this country quite um, with a quite a low number here? So here number 4. Then of course this would be a hint that you should start to look into more detail what is behind the trade volume. So which kind of products are there? And what did I meant? The wars of the United States. So going to Venezuela and going to Iraq is just the simple explanation. It's about the oil. Okay, so largest provider of high performance chips in the world. And then you can use its database and go into the category electronics. And so then I wouldn't be surprised if you find then they are relatively an even larger volume of Taiwan relative to the imports of the other countries. Okay, yeah, so this is now just the descriptive explanation, and this is then also just very surprisingly the reason which we are feeding as theory in our gravity trade model, because of course the larger the trading partners, the greater can be the trade volume, and of course also the smaller the distance between the trading partners, the greater is the trade volume, because of this very simple transportation cost argument. And you, of course, has given us also these arguments. And then I also said, well, if we look then at the size, and then we can say from the supply side, the larger the economy, the larger is their potential to produce export goods. So this would be supply of goods. And of course, the larger the economy, this means, remember the 3 different kinds of calculation of GDP. There we also said, well, we have the production side, supply side, and we can then interpret GDP also as total income of the world. And what we are doing with income, this was the expenditure side. Well, we can buy things. Well, and the larger our income, this is the argument for microeconomics, normal goods, that the larger my income, the larger is my demand. So I'm not surprised that if I have a higher income, that I'm importing more goods. So this would be the demand of goods. So I think no surprise here. These are the general economic arguments which we find. And now let's go into more detail because of this distance argument. There, until now, well, Canada and Mexico are just neighbors, and then I just can send a truck to these. This is the general transportation cost argument. But let's go back into this one. Then, for example, exports, we see that the United States are exporting more to the United Kingdom compared to Germany. Let's paste this here also. Say we had also Taiwan. So then we go to 25. Where shall I put it? No, let's take a new slide. And this one, oops, this is now IMF. And this is GDP in, I think, million US dollar. So we see United Kingdom 4 trillion US dollars, Germany 5. So we are roughly 20% larger, but if we look at the exports, then roughly 1 billion compared to 800. So maybe 15 to 20% is the export volume to the United Kingdom larger than the export volume to Germany. And then we have to admit the distance to the United Kingdom and the distance to Germany, they are more or less the same. Difference is maybe 500 kilometers compared to the 6,000 kilometers overall of the Atlantic Ocean. So what could be there? The reason that the United States are exporting more to the United Kingdom compared to Germany. Because due to our arguments, which we have still, then we would say, well, the exports to Germany should be larger. So there we have to have other reasons. And also we have to admit the general preferences. United Kingdom and Germany are both highly developed countries, so the demand structure, the preferences within of the people within these countries should be also very similar. So we will demand similar goods in Germany from the United States and in the UK. But what can be then the difference within the trade relations between United States and United Kingdom and the United States and Germany? So somehow it has to be more easy to trade between UK and US compared to UK and Germany. If you as a person need something and you are looking for a trading partner, To whom are you going at first? Or in general, you need something. Which are the persons you are asking at first? For example, you need, well, we are looking here at goods, but similar reasons we find also when we are talking about services. You have not participated in the lecture and my upload hasn't worked, so you need the content of the lecture. Which one are you asking? Whom are you asking? Sorry. Hmm? Well, I would say, or I would go to a friend, or I would go to someone who understands me, where I do not have to explain very much. And what is now the difference between, in general, the relation between the United Kingdom and Germany relative to the United States? Well, somehow United Kingdom and we have similar problems with the United States. But if you go back and then you see that in the UK, the Prime Minister some years ago was a similar crazy guy as Donald Trump. But in general, why is it maybe easier to trade goods between UK and the United States compared to Germany and the United States? You know from me that I quite often make historical arguments. Tariffs. Um, this could be the case, but there I already said it. UK and Germany or the EU has similar problems with the United States, so the tariffs are quite similar. And even one can say that we can make more pressure on the United States because if you take the overall market of the European Union, then we have quite a lot of goods which the United States need. But I said historical arguments. If you look at the history of the United States, then how were the United States are created? When were they founded? Hmm? What is the birthday of the United States? You see all these things which you should have learned in school, they are all coming again because they are useful. And if we look at the actual situation, then we have to admit history is not boring and history is really useful in order to explain the situation today. So now we make a history lesson. What is the birthday, or when is the birthday of the United States? You are sitting in front of your laptop. You could have already asked Claude, Grok, ChatGPT, or whomever. 4th of July, 1776. Of course, because of what has happened the years before 1776. Hmm? Before he became president, George Washington. After him, the capital of the United States is named. Hmm. What was his duty? What has he done? Well, at first he was a farmer, and then did you really have not the topic United States in history? Because what has happened in 1776 was not only important for the United States, but important for the world. And even we have to admit some really good things for mankind has happened earlier in the United States in the 1770s compared to Europe, where then similar things has happened roughly 15 years or 10, 15 years later. So United States, just there were some guys and said, well, now we found a new country, drinking a beer or some tea. Actually, this has something to do with tea. So you really haven't talked in school about the Declaration of Independence, the Boston Tea Party. Yes, here it is, the Boston Tea Party. And now we are back in our trade lecture, Boston Tea Party. What is this about? And what has the Boston Tea Party initiated? Quite often, the world wars or the wars in the world, the reasons can be found in the economic situation. Well, there was coming a ship from UK trading goods, tea, and what the people in America, we had not have already in the United States. In America, they throw all the tea into the harbor of Boston. Yes, because the United Kingdom made large pressure on their provinces. And there we have something similar to the relation between Taiwan and China. Well, the states in the now United States, these were just colonies in general of the United Kingdom in the south and in the north. You know, there we had also some colonies of France on the soil of the North American continent. Well, and then the people stood up there and said, well, we do not want to have anymore the government in London. We want to be independent. And then they started the war and they won this war. And then they found the United States. And here we are back in the explanation for why are in general the trade relations between the United Kingdom and USA are more intensive compared to them with Germany. Well, so to speak, the United States has been founded out of the United Kingdom. So the cultural background between United Kingdom and the US is much closer compared to Germany. Because of course we have also, maybe you have been already in Bremerhaven, where are many ships with people from Germany um, went to the United States in the 19th century. But there are much more people from the UK and, of course, also maybe you know this because in Ireland in the 18th and in the 19th century there were starving many people. So we have also many people from Ireland. But there maybe you also know that Ireland and the United Kingdom they were formed also over long years one country. And of course, which language is in general spoken in the United States and which language is spoken in the United Kingdom? English, of course. And there you also can think of that having the same language, talking the same language, then it's also easier to trade with each other. Of course, nowadays, English is the general language for the world. I explained it to you. In science, it was quite a long time in the beginning of the 20th century German, but then we made this very large mistake of initiating the most horrible war in um, the time, and since then we talk also in science English. So there we can somehow say qualitatively the United Kingdom and the United States are moving a bit closer together because of the cultural background. It is easier to trade with each other. Well, let's go to number 5. There's Netherlands. And Netherlands is a little bit larger than Taiwan, but not that much. Here. Whoops. 1.3 trillion, again, compared to Germany or also compared to the United Kingdom. United Kingdom is 3 times larger and Germany 3.5 times larger than the Netherlands, also same distance. And here we cannot say, well, they are talking the same language. Oh, maybe in the Netherlands, more people speak English or speak better English than me. But this cannot be the general argument why this relatively much smaller country exports more to the United States than Germany and almost that much as the United Kingdom. Oh, we are almost through. But this argument I want to have from you. What is special about the Netherlands in international trade relations? There has to be something. Yes, of course, the port, the largest port in Europe. Still one of the largest ports in the world. Of course, the largest ports are nowadays in China, also the port of Singapore, and then you have the port of New York and LA. New York, I don't know if it's larger than Rotterdam, but as I know LA, but I think around within the 10th largest ports. And it is the, so to speak, port of Europe. It is by far the largest one. I think roughly 3 times larger than Antwerpen, and Hamburg is 1/10, I think, of Rotterdam. So it is not that they have the goods, but the goods are coming to the Netherlands and then they start their journey to the United States. So here then we could say this has something to do with geography. If you have a port, if there are mountains in between and so on. So let's just have a look in general, because there are also two other arguments, but about these we want then to talk tomorrow. So what do we have? In general, distance, transportation costs, cultural affinity, and geography. One is, of course, the harbors, or if the distance is not that far away. Think, for example, trade relations between Germany and Italy. Italy is almost a neighbor. There's also only this small part of Austria in between, but there is, of course, the mountains of the Alps, and there you cannot go that easy over. And then are, in general, borders. In general, if you have many formalities, and the fifth argument, which is then the argument for a general concept of distance, that you do not only use kilometers, is if you have multinational corporations within your country. But about this, we want then to talk tomorrow. Thank you very much.